This is the Tom Bigby Tales, and I'm your host, Shannon Evans. I write about a small town in northeast Mississippi called Columbus, and sometimes I write about the rest of the state. This episode is titled The Unsung Stories of Freedom, The Motley Family's Journey, a Tale of Courage and Education. The mid-19th century American South was a complex landscape of systemic oppression where human beings were treated as property and interracial relationships were not only socially taboo, but legally dangerous. They were illegal. Against this backdrop, the Motley family's story emerges as a testament to individual courage and familial resilience. In the heart of Mississippi during the tumultuous years before the Civil War, a remarkable story of love, liberation, and hope unfolded. The story of Allen Motley and his son Peter, a narrative that challenges the conventional understanding of slavery and familial bonds in antebellum America. Allen Motley, a Virginia-born overseer in Lowndes County, who over time became a planter and slave owner in his own right, defied the rigid social structures of his time and fell in love with Millie, an enslaved woman he initially purchased as a housekeeper. Now, were they a couple before he purchased her or after? We don't know that. But their connection transcended the brutal transactional nature of slavery, resulting in the birth of 3 children, Peter, Josephine, and Bergelius. The family lived together in their home as a family unit. In 1858, Allen made a bold decision that would change his son Peter's life forever. In that year, Allen undertook a perilous journey that summer that would fundamentally alter the trajectory of his son's life. Understanding the legal impossibility of manumission in Mississippi, manumission would be freeing an enslaved person, Allen strategically traveled to Cincinnati, Ohio, a free state with more progressive legal frameworks in that time regarding racial identity and personal freedom, and he went there with a single purpose: to secure his son's freedom. He applied to the Ohio courts, and the court granted Peter his freedom, opening doors that seemed impossible in the South pre-Civil War. Allen's vision was clear. Peter would attend Wilberforce University, a prestigious private Black college, and potentially continue his education in Germany. The court's decision to grant Peter his freedom was unprecedented. This legal recognition opened educational and social opportunities that were systematically denied to African Americans during that era. Allen's strategic planning positioned Peter to potentially become an educated, free individual in a society designed to oppress him and to suppress such aspirations. But then the Civil War kicked off. Peter, by then, had finished his education at Wilberforce University, and now he joined the U.S. Colored Troops in the 115th Infantry, a powerful, symbolic, and literal manifestation of fighting for the very freedom his father had secured for him. His military service represented not just personal liberation, but a broader struggle for racial equality and national transformation. However, after the war, he returned home to Mississippi to farm with his family. By 1880, the family is still located on Robertson Road in Lowndes County, navigating the complex social landscape of post-Reconstruction era Mississippi. Allen, the father, passed in 1890, marking the end of a remarkable patriarch who had systematically challenged the oppressive systems of his time. Allen Motley, however, was buried in the white-only Friendship Cemetery in Columbus, and not in the Motley Cemetery, where the people who worked on his farm and his children and grandchildren would be buried. Peter's later life, however, does remain a mystery. He pretty much disappears after his father's death in 1890, so he is pretty much a footnote in the vast narrative of the post-Civil War America. We think he returned to Ohio. There is a Peter Motley in Ohio. However, it is difficult to ascertain if it is the Peter Motley of Mississippi. The Motley family's narrative represents a microcosm of resistance, demonstrating how individual acts of courage could challenge and gradually dismantle systemic oppression. However, we all know how this ended. Most families did not have the means, nor did they have the resources, much less the ability to leave Mississippi, and their owners certainly didn't want their manumission. So, this story of the Motley family illuminates the nuanced ways a handful of enslaved and marginally free African Americans negotiated survival with dignity and the potential in advancement that they were able to eke out. This episode aims not just to recount this family's history, but explores the uncomfortable truths of how children from mixed relationships, where there was a power imbalance of a landed gentry white male and their children with enslaved women, and what was the reality of their lives. It was very unusual for a father in Mississippi to push for the manumission of his child and to take that child north, gain their manumission, and then to make sure that they had the finest education possible. I want to thank you for coming on my podcast, The Tombaby Tales. I'm Shannon Evans. Until next time.